I think iris scans raise a lot of concerns. Maybe someone will say we donate our iris to
World
Network, or they will steal the iris, or the iris is the one.
People always have this concern, or maybe a conspiracy.
Yeah. So how do you assure people the raw data is not stored?
I think that's generally what we see with new technologies, right? There's a very healthy amount of questions at the beginning. And then as people understand two things, one, that it is actually really private, and two, that it's really useful, then it starts building trust and it grows on a market, right? And to the question about buying biometrics, look, you're using biometrics to unlock your phone, and like Apple doesn't get it, they don't win anything by it. Yeah. It's just like, that's a secure way to unlock your phone. And World ID is the same thing, right? At the end of the day, the system is open source, the core hardware is open source, the protocol is open source, the software is open source. And so this is not just a situation where you have to trust us. Many people around the world have gone in and verified that the systems actually work this the way we say they do.
Hi, 大家好，欢迎回到 Side Chat， 我是 Inside 的编辑 Mia。
我是 Fox。那今天很高兴邀请到的是 World 的产品长，叫 Tiago。那我们等一下就会完全改用英文来发音。那如果这个 podcast 如果听的朋友呢听不懂，那可能也许可以到 YouTube 上面直接看中文的字幕。Tiago, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. Before we dive in, I think I first time heard about this project about maybe 2.5 years ago, and not long after ChatGPT launched, when Sam mentioned this fascinating project around universal basic income and digital identity. I think that eventually evolved into what we know as World. So Tiago, can you introduce yourself and share how you became the CPO at Tools for Humanity? What led you to join the team?
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's my first time here in Taiwan. I've been so happy seeing around the city, meeting the people, meeting partners. So very, very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, the story of World and Tools for Humanity is a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
We can talk about the project in a little bit, but first of all, myself, I'm originally from Mexico. I grew up there all my life. And around high school, I started building robots with my friends. Through that, I got a scholarship to go to the US to study robotics engineering, computer science, but I actually dropped out halfway through to start a startup with the friends I used to build robots with. So I went back to Mexico and built a payments company very similar to like Alipay or WeChat Pay. But in Mexico, that company went through a program called Y Combinator, which Sam was president of at the time. And so Sam and I originally met at Y Combinator in 2017. We continued to grow our company. Eventually, we sold it. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And when we were about to start another one, I met Alex Blania, Sam's co-founder for Tools for Humanity. And this idea of World was just so crazy for me that I said, okay, I'm going to join Tools for Humanity for 3 months to help you start it. And then I will leave and start my own company. And it's now been more than 4 years. So, so that's how I originally joined the project. It was too irresistible. It was very crazy of an idea, but I think it's something that we needed to try. And so it's been a long adventure these 4 years and having the time of my life.
Wow, it looks so fun for you, so you can stay so long.
Yes, for sure. I would have never guessed. I am a terrible employee, I will tell you that. Alex would probably agree with that, but still, I'm having a lot of fun. This is really such a crazy project to build. It's new technology across the board. We're building at a global scale, and a very, very important problem. And so, this is just the kind of thing that you grow up wanting to build.
So what is the mission of the Tools for Humanity and the World Network project? If you have to describe it in simple, everyday terms, how would you say it?
Yes. So the simplest way to explain it, it's actually on the name itself, right? The name of our company is called Tools for Humanity. And this company started about 5 years ago, when Sam was working on all of the things that eventually became ChatGPT and eventually became DALL-E. And he saw a few things. He saw that he believed that advanced artificial intelligence was possible. And even just saying that it was possible within 100 years was very controversial back then.
Yeah.
But even more controversial was to say that it was going to arrive within 5, 10, 20 years very soon. And so Sam believed at the time that's going to be one of the most exciting moments in human history. When we have this new technology, we can improve many people's lives, have new kinds of healthcare and all these sorts of things. But at the same time, it's going to come with new challenges, right?
Yeah.
And we as a society are going to need new tools to solve those challenges. And so our company is almost like a research lab called Tools for Humanity that started to build the technologies that we believed humans would need in the age of AI.
Yeah.
And so we started exploring many of them. And there was a couple of problems that we thought were interesting. The first, and the one that perhaps is the most clear to everyone right now, is that in the age of AI, when everything can be faked on the internet, you don't know who and what to trust anymore. And so you go on a social media website and you see 20,000 accounts saying their opinion. Well, you don't know if that's 20,000 people giving their real opinion or one person with 20,000 bots and deepfakes pushing some agenda, right? And you go to Tinder or a dating app and you're swiping and all of a sudden you see that someone has 6 fingers and you're like, why is that? And you realize that you're getting catfished. You go gaming and all of a sudden people are way better than they used to be because they're cheating with bots, right? Or something as simple as concert tickets, right?
Yeah.
Taylor Swift will put out her new concert and in an instant, all of her tickets are gone to bots. And so everything on the internet, it becomes really difficult to know what is a human and what is not. So just like these, there's other challenges that come with AI. And when you take a look at all of those challenges, whether it's trust on the internet, the economic impact of AI, fair access to AI for everyone, what we believe is the solution to all of those is to create a network of real humans. We believe that if we were to add a layer of humanity to the internet, basically we have like a blue check mark that actually works, that tells you that is a real human. We believe we would have the tools to solve all of those problems. So that's exactly what World is. World started at Tools for Humanity. We worked on it for something like 5 years, and we launched it 2 years ago when you first heard about it.
That's why.
In the summer of 2023. And now World is this open ecosystem that is much bigger than our company. There's more than 100 companies around the world that contribute to the protocol one way or another. And it has grown a lot over the last 2 years. It is now at about 30 million people, and about 15 million of those have been verified as real humans. But the ultimate goal is to make it accessible to everyone in the world. And so that is a little bit about the project.
Great. But today, many people have heard about AI, blockchain, universal basic income. But these ideas still feel abstract to most. Can you explain what each of these concepts means and why they matter, and how Tools for Humanity and the World Network combine them under the same mission?
Yes. So I think when we talk about things like blockchains or proof of human or zero knowledge proof, like all these complicated terms, right? At the end of the day, that's just a technology. And when you think about like Facebook, right? Or WeChat, that is useful to you and I in our lives. And we don't need to know what technologies they use behind the scenes. And so World uses technologies that are so new that I think people a lot of time focus on the technology that we're using. And yes, we're using really new technologies because otherwise it would not be possible to build a system like this at a global scale. But what matters at the end of the day is not so much the technology, but what it gives us for our day-to-day life. And what it gives us for our day-to-day life is things like being able to have social media that we trust, right? Imagine being able to actually go back on Twitter and knowing, that's a real person and I can trust what they're saying. Or going, again, to a dating app and trusting that you are not putting yourself in danger because the person that you're going to meet is a real person, right? Even something as simple as polls, right? Today we see polls on the internet and it's really easy to cheat with bots, so we can't really trust them. And so what World is all about is bringing that trust back to the internet. The technologies that we use, whether it's blockchains or all of these other fancy things, that's very interesting to us and very interesting for the people that want to dive into them. But at the end of the day, what people care about is how will this impact my life? And that is, you're going to be able to trust the internet again.
Okay. So I think the most of concept, one of the most important concept is proof of human. It means verifying a real person versus a bot. Why is that important? And can you give a simple real life example of that?
Yes, for sure. So I think bots are awesome, right? I'm really excited to have many little agents that are helping me with everything I do in my life.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of work that I do day to day that I'm like, I just want to text someone and have them do it, and then they come back to me. Or like planning a trip, right? I just took a vacation with my friends, or my mom have had some health things last year. And it's very good to have an assistant that you can just be like, hey, here's what's happening. Help me think through these problems. And they have all the knowledge of all human history and instant processing, and they can get you back very fast. So bots, I think, are amazing. But I also at the same time think that humans need to have a special place on the internet. Right? At the end of the day, the world should be built for humans and in the service of humans, not for bots. And the problem is that sometimes some people abuse bots to cheat, whether it is to cheat on a social media website, to cheat on a video game, to cheat on concert tickets, to cheat on promotions. And so proof of human is very important to bring back this trust. The thing with proof of human, I think we can all understand why it's important. The problem is, how do you actually solve for proof of human? Because the way we used to do this was with CAPTCHAs, right? You would go on a website and you would check a little box, I am a human.
I am a human.
And then you would do a little puzzle.
Which one of this is a bike?
Exactly. Which one is a bike? Do the letters match? And the way CAPTCHAs work is very simple. If you are smart enough to solve the puzzle, you're a human. If you're kind of stupid, then you're probably a bot, right? The problem is bots are now smarter than humans.
The AI is smarter than human.
All of these AIs.
They crack the CAPTCHA already.
Of course, they can do nuclear physics. Of course, they can solve the CAPTCHA, right? And so when you start thinking, okay, if CAPTCHA doesn't work anymore, then how do we know what is a human or not? Then you say, okay, let's verify the ID, right? Well, but now we have deepfakes. And so now it turns out what banks all over the world are learning is that you can create a fake ID and a fake selfie with deepfakes. And so most of the things that you would think about trying to be able to have proof of human, they don't work because you can fake them with AI. And so proof of human is not only more important than ever in a world with AI, it's also harder than ever to accomplish, which is why we spent so many years and we ultimately ended with the device called the orb, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit today. But this is why we had to spend so many years solving that problem.
Okay.
So as we can see on the press release, World App is an app by Tools for Humanity, and that allows users to verify their identity and securely receive and store and use the Worldcoin and other digital assets. But what exactly does the World App do? So can you give us some examples of that?
Yes, for sure. So one way to think about World is like this open network, sort of like the internet. And so imagine we invented a new layer to the internet. But how do you actually use the internet, right? You use the internet through apps like Google Chrome, Safari, or maybe apps like WeChat that connect directly to it, right? So there needs to be apps that connect to networks. And so when we created World, we realized, well, someone has to build the first app that connects to the network. In the future, there will probably be many, but someone has to build the first one. So we should build the first one so that we show people how can you use the World Network. People can start signing up, and then in the future, many developers will build other kinds of applications. And so that is exactly what World App is. World App is the first app that is built on top of the World Network. And more specifically, it is a super app for humans. And so just like you would have with Grab or Line or WeChat or Alipay all over the world, these kinds of applications that bring a lot of functionality together. World App is just like that, but what we believe is the future. So it is a global super app that is for humans only, and it has a couple of interesting things about it. First, you have your identity, which is your proof of human. And so just like on every other super app, you have a profile. But in this case, that profile is anonymous. But at the same time, you can only have that profile if you're a verified human. And that is a very powerful thing because everyone on World App you can trust. Second, it has a wallet built right in, just like some of those other super apps that you know.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, that wallet is using blockchains so that this can be a global super app where you can transact with anyone around the world, not just inside of one country. It also has social features. So you can chat with your friends, but when you're texting with someone, their profile picture is verified by World ID. So you know that it's actually them. It cannot be a deepfake. And then lastly, you have something called mini apps, which are third-party apps that developers can build and you can install right inside of World App. And they enable products that weren't possible before because they connect with these three things. They connect with your identity, with your wallet, with your social network. And so developers get to build applications that weren't possible before, and you can use them right from inside of the app. And so World App right now has more than 30 million users. It's growing super fast around the world. Again, behind the scenes, it uses a lot of complex technologies like blockchains and things like that. But to use it, you actually don't need to know anything about that because when you're using it, you're not reading about crypto tokens. You're using just US dollars, and you are sending around the world is as easy as sending a text message to a friend. You don't need to know anything about the technology behind the scenes.
There are many super apps around the world. For example, maybe WeChat, or in Taiwan, we will say the super app is Line. In the Southeast Asia, we will say it's Grab, I guess. They have a different angle to make them become the super app. But what's your angle to do that?
Yes. So I would say the first thing I would say is the way World is built, right, is we want a lot of apps to connect to the World network. Yeah. And so what I imagine in the future is that all of these super apps that you've mentioned, you will also be able to use World through them, right? We only build World app so that there's the first one available. And yes, we think it'll be a very big application globally. But we're also very excited about the idea of Line and Grab and Alipay and all those companies integrating World as the network grows, right? So that's the first thing I would say. This is an open ecosystem that anyone can plug into. But then specifically for World app, the most unique piece about it is that it's only for humans, right? And so there is a lot of things that you can do. It sounds very simple, but when you can trust that everyone inside of a super app is a verified human, it unlocks a lot of things. It unlocks a lot of new types of social products because you have trust built into that. It allows you to do things like global payments without the fear of fraud, right? It allows a lot of third-party mini apps that weren't possible before. So mini games where you earn money and rewards, or apps where you can respond to polls, or sorts of things that are only possible if you have a verified human. And so our ecosystem of mini apps, of social products, of financial products, they all are uniquely enabled by the fact that everyone on World App is a real human.
Okay. You mentioned before the difference between World ID and the old methods like CAPTCHA we use to verify the human. But what makes World ID so special? Because we know that AI may be fooled these old methods, but there are so many other options. How does World ID differ from other kinds of solutions?
Yes, so there's a ton of things that when you think about how to verify a human, your mind immediately goes to, right? And we had the same intuition. So we actually tested a lot of things before settling down on how World ID works today. First, we considered the CAPTCHA thing. Okay, can we build a better CAPTCHA? But as we talked about, that is just too easy to fake with AI.
Yes.
Then we went to digital IDs, and same thing, right? It turns out that you actually, the dirty little secret of banks around the world is that you actually didn't really need AI to be able to fake KYC. You could go in many countries, you could go on Google Images, print a fake ID, and already get through many of these systems. Yes. But now with AI, that is even easier. Right? Because you can create one that actually looks like a fake ID. And then you can do the selfie with a deep fake, and you can be whoever you want to be. Right? And so digital IDs, they're not secure, but they're also not inclusive, right? What it turns out that when you start looking at things, more than half of the global adult population does not have an ID you can digitally verify. And that is not just in emerging countries. It is even in places like the US, a huge percent of the population doesn't even have a passport, right? And so you cannot build a global network. It's not secure. And lastly, it's not private, right? Because if I have to send you my ID for you to verify it, then you're going to know everything about me. You're going to know my picture, my date of birth, where I was, my address in many countries, my full name. And so it just doesn't work at all. Right? It's not secure, it's not private, and it's not inclusive. So we said, okay, digital ID is not it. Then we started exploring other ideas. Like people have had this notion of something called a web of trust, which is this idea that maybe I say that you, Fox, are a real human, and then you say that Lily is a real human, and so on and so forth. And so you can create a web of people that you trust. The problem is if one person in that chain lies or is a bot, then the whole thing breaks apart, right? Like a house of cards. And so, well, that also doesn't work. And so we kept thinking about ideas, and ultimately what we realized is, look, the way to verify that someone is a real person is you have to see them, right? I am looking at you right now, and I know that you are a real person. And so how can we take that and digitalize it, right? How can we have a physical presence test and a test, yes, I saw Fox in person, and so I can promise you that this was a real human. And how can I prove that technologically in a way that is very difficult to defraud? And so then you land on biometrics. And that's not a new idea. Like your iPhone uses biometrics, governments use biometrics. It's very well understood. What is challenging is doing biometrics at a global scale.
Yes.
Because your iPhone, for example, it can only distinguish between 1 in a million people. And that is fine, because having a 1 in a million chance for someone to be able to go into your phone, that's pretty secure.
Yeah.
But if you're building an identity system, it needs to work not for 1 million people, it needs to work for 10 billion people. And so what we ended up realizing after a lot of tests and experimentation is that iris is actually the most secure and inclusive biometric out there. This is why also Apple is now using it on the Vision Pro, right? They have this new, just like they have Touch ID and Face ID, they now have Optic ID that uses iris biometrics. And so we built a device called the Orb that looks very cool, but it's basically just a fancy camera that is able to look at you and without saving any of your information, be able to give you a certificate of, yes, you are a real and unique human. So that then when you go to other websites or applications that want to know, hey, is this a real human? You can show them that blue check mark without revealing anything about yourself, but with the security of knowing, yes, this person has been verified in the real world.
Why is the iris? Why not fingerprints or anything else?
Yeah, it's a great question. We tested all of them, right? And so let's take the example of your fingerprints. First of all, it turns out your fingerprints are not different enough to distinguish between 1 in 10 billion people. You would have similarities where it's close enough to someone else where you actually start confusing people. Even faces, right? And that's not just a problem for computers. Even us humans, people have done studies where if you put a large enough number of faces, even we cannot tell them apart enough. And so it turns out that iris actually has enough complexity for you able to tell 10 billion people apart. But then it's also other things like your palm or your face, they change a lot or they're easy to modify. So people that do manual labor, their fingerprints wear off as they work, right? Or they may lose a finger. Or if you want to cheat, you could just do a little cut on your finger and now you're a new person, right? And so it turns out that iris is not only the most secure method, but it's also the most inclusive one.
Okay. So we'll go back to Orb later. And let's talk about Worldcoin. Like many cryptocurrencies products or projects tend to focus on the coin price or just to attract public attention. But we have noticed that the World Network is shifting away from emphasizing the price of the Worldcoin and instead focus more on the World ID identity verification tool. So could you explain the reasons behind the shift, or what considerations guide your communication strategy?
I think a lot of people knowing the project because of the
Worldcoin.
And I guess there are a lot of people the crypto enthusiasts and they crazy they are too crazy about the coin prices. So it will make you feel not for the purpose. Not the good purpose. Yeah.
I think when you think about like cryptocurrencies, right, especially when we started the project, one of the challenges of cryptocurrencies just hasn't reached mass adoption, right? Even something like Bitcoin, I haven't looked at the stat in a couple of years, but last time I looked at it, I think it was only like 2% of the population had ever held Bitcoin. That's actually not a lot of people, right? There's a lot more people in some of the social media apps and things like that we use. And so I think that obsessing so much about like the tokens and the memes and all of those things, like it's great for a small audience. But when you want to build something that will hopefully reach every person in the world, no pun intended, you have to go things about a different way. And I think people care a lot more about the benefits that you can bring to their life rather than the coin itself. And don't get me wrong, I think the coin is really cool. I think that one of the biggest challenges with something like World is, okay, you want to onboard the entire planet to a new system. How do you do that? Right? And it turns out that apps like PayPal or Uber or Airbnb solved that many years ago, which is you raise some amount of money. For example, PayPal raised $80 million. They took 70 million of that, so the majority, and they gave it away as incentives for you to try the product. And if you like it, you stuck around. If you didn't, you left. And it turns out that was a very successful way of growing the network. But, well, you could only get to a few million users or maybe like 100 million users with that. But what happens if you want to get to a billion users? So we had this idea with World of what happens if instead of raising money and giving that away, if you gave away the ownership of the network itself, right? Maybe instead of $70 million, you have $700 million or $7 billion to give away so that a lot of people can try it. If they like it, they stick around. And so that is only possible because of the Worldcoin token. Right? And so I think it's a very important piece of the project. But at the end of the day, that only gets you to the point where people try the product. And then the question becomes, are you giving enough value to people's lives? Is this useful enough for them to stick around using it? And so that's what we care the most about. I don't think it's super healthy to all day be thinking about the token prices. Just like if you were a company, you don't want to be thinking about your stock or those kind of things every day. You want to focus on building the best product for your consumers, and everything else follows.
Okay.
As Sam Altman has said that AI will reshape the economy, so we need a way to identify the real humans and fairly distribute the value that AI creates. Like you mentioned before, like many tiny AI agents helping us doing everything. He sees World ID and Worldcoin as a infrastructure to the universal basic income. So can you please explain to us that perhaps maybe with an analogy, how Worldcoin plus AI ensures the real persons get fair share of resources?
It sounds very far away.
Yes. So it's a great question, right? Because we're going to this new world, and I think no one, not even Sam, knows like what that would look like. And what we do know is that it is very important to us, and to Sam also personally, that the benefits of AI are fairly distributed around the world, right? Now, what that means, I think we actually still have to figure it out, right? If you talk to some people, they will tell you that the answer is UBI, right? And that the governments or that nonprofits will have to actually give money to people. I don't know if that's the case, because honestly, it's really hard for me to predict. But the cool thing about the World Network is it could enable experiments like that, because there's two challenges with something like UBI. First, you need to make sure each person only claims their part once. And two, you need a financial layer to be able to send this money to everyone, right? And so World has both of those things. It has the identity and the finance. And so if someone wants to run a UBI experiment, they could use the World network for that. It's infrastructure for that. But we are not doing UBI ourselves. Where I think it also gets, I think, a little bit more practical, that people will understand this. Distributing the benefits of AI is not just distributing money, but also distributing AI itself. Right? One of the challenges that AI companies are having right now is that when you use ChatGPT, that's actually really expensive for them, right? Yeah. Because the compute behind the scenes is really expensive. And so one way to think about it is compute is a limited resource, right? When you use YouTube, Google doesn't really spend a lot of money on you. So it's really easy for them to give YouTube for free to everyone, right? And if there's bots, they lose a little bit of money on it, but it's less expensive. But what happens with AI products is it's really expensive to run them. And so if people start abusing them with bots, that can bankrupt those companies, right? And so, and AI is going to be so important and so powerful that it's very important that everyone gets to use it equally. Because if, let's say that a specific, Mexico doesn't get to use some AI product, then that country may get left behind.
Yeah.
And so I think another way to think about how to fairly distribute the benefits of AI to everyone is having a proof of human that allows you to say, you know what, everyone gets some amount of compute, right? Some amount of AI usage. And if you want to get more, that's great. You can pay for it. But using a proof of human, you can prevent abuse so that companies can continue offering that free tier for everyone.
As we know, if you don't pay for ChatGPT, you can use the not the most advanced model. You can use the lazy one. Okay, so maybe the Worldcoin can help you with that, right?
Yes, and in general, even just distributing those free models, it is really hard for these companies. I've seen it behind the scenes, not just with OpenAI. Every company that is giving this away, they're having to build these huge data centers that at the scale that we have never seen before, just to keep up with all of the demand from users, and they're really excited about that. But that is only possible, and in the future, as these models get more complex, it'll be increasingly important to make sure that people aren't abusing that, right? That I'm not using my personal account and connecting that to my app, and then having 1 million users use my personal account, right? Because then those AI companies are going to go bankrupt, or they're going to have to lock away the free tier from everyone, which I think no one wants, right? And so just like there may be experiments in universal basic income, I think we are starting to see already experiments with universal basic computing, right?
Fascinating idea. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's talk about the orb. Orb. It is a custom biometric device created by Tools for Humanity. The orb scans a user's iris and then converts that biometric data into a secure, privacy-preserving World ID. Can you describe step by step what happens when someone uses it for the first time?
Yes.
Okay.
So we talked about why we think iris and biometrics in general are the solution to proof of human, right? But then the question is, okay, how do you even do that, right? How do you verify someone's biometrics around the world in a way in which people cannot cheat, right? Bad actors cannot hack the system, but also in a way that is privacy preserving, right? Because yes, philosophically, we don't want people's data, but also in practice, having people's data is just a huge liability, right? Like we don't want to be responsible for storing people's data. So this was a really hard problem. We thought about it for many years, and the outcome was the orb. And so the orb is this device. It looks it's a little bit smaller than a basketball, and it's round to represent the shape of the world. And the orb actually has two halves, and when it comes together, and you see those two halves, that's actually exactly at the angle of the Earth's rotation. So it has a lot of symbolism on the device itself. Our engineering team was not very happy that it was a sphere because it's a lot easier to build a box than a sphere. But it's a really cute.
Shining.
It's a really cute device. You have to see. We just introduced the latest one in April. It's now white. It looks, if you've ever seen WALL-E, it looks a little bit like Eve, the futuristic robot, WALL-E's girlfriend. So it's a very cute device. I love it. And so the orb has two jobs. First of all, it has to make sure that you're a real human, right? And so to do that, it has a bunch of sensors very similar to the ones that your iPhone has on the top of it, where it basically looks at your face and it makes sure that you're not wearing a mask, that you're actually a person, that you're an adult, that you're not wearing contact lenses, that you're not a doll, things like that, right? So it's doing what we call the proof of human aspect of it. And it's able to do all of that without your data leaving the device, because the orb has a really powerful NVIDIA chip inside of it. So just like the ones that you hear about for video games or for training AI, the orb has one of those inside. And so locally, it's running a lot of artificial intelligence models that are checking, okay, is this a real human? And then once the orb is like, yep, this looks like a real human that is not trying to cheat, then it does what we call a proof of uniqueness, which is the step that makes sure that you only get one world ID. And that is what we use iris biometrics for. So you'll take a picture of your iris, it'll create a special code from it called the iris code, and the orb will take all of that data and it will send it over to your personal phone, and it's immediately deleted from the orb. And so the really cool thing about the system, which was really hard to do, was building it in a way in which we do not have to store your information. The orb is, the way to think about it is like as a camera that signs all of the pictures that it takes, and then it sends it to your phone, and the orb can forget them. And so when you're using them from your device. And so if you ever want to delete that stuff, you can simply do it by tapping a thing on the phone. And so the cool thing is we don't need to have a server with all your personal information, right? All of this sensitive information collected by the orb. If one day someone, for whatever reason, hacks into our servers, well, they cannot get them. There's nothing, right? And so it was very important for us to build the system that way. And so using the orb is super simple. You only have to do it once. It's sort of like getting a driver's license. You download the World app, you find the orb nearest you, you book an appointment, and when you show up, the process takes like 30 seconds. The orb just looks at you from far away, it does a bling, and then you're done, and the rest of the processing is from your device. And that verification lasts a few years, right? And so we think it's going to be something like 2 or 3 years where you'll have to go back and renew it just like you would renew a driver's license. But you actually don't need to use the orb every time you're going to use a website, right? Because your proof of human, your world ID lives on your device.
Is there any way to hack the certification on your phone?
So no, because one of the things that we do is every time you're going to use your world ID, you have to take, it's almost like a selfie, sort of like Face ID from your phone, where your phone has to check that the current face trying to use that world ID matches the one that the orb saw during verification. And we're able to do that comparison locally in your device so that your data doesn't have to leave. But since you remember that your orb pictures were sent to your phone, and so since they're already in your phone, we can compare them against what your phone is seeing right now. So every time you're going to use your ID, you have to authenticate that you are the person that actually owns that ID. Yes.
Okay. I think iris scans raise a lot of concerns. Maybe someone will say we donate our iris to
World
Network, or they will steal the iris, or the iris is the one.
People always have this concern, or maybe a conspiracy.
So how do you assure people the raw data is not stored? Can you explain with a simple analogy?
So it's, first of all, I think it's a very normal and natural question, right?
Every
new technology that has ever come up there's like these sort of questions. I remember when the iPhone came out with Touch ID, I was still in school, and one of my friends, we were like a bunch of nerds that were friends, and he was like, "Oh, I'm never going to use an iPhone again. Like they now do like thumb biometrics." And then, of course, 6 months later, he had the iPhone with Touch ID.
Yeah.
Right? And then a few years after that, we were, I think, now in university or something like this. The Apple came out with Face ID, right, with the iPhone 10. And that same friend was like, "Oh no, this time they're not going to get me." And so he put a little sticker on top of the Face ID sensor, right? And then 1 year later, I saw him, and of course, his phone did not have the sticker anymore, right? And so I remember when the new Vision Pro came out with Optic ID, with Iris, I messaged him like, "So are you also not going to get this one?" And of course, he had gotten it. And so I tell that story because I think that's generally what we see with new technologies, right? There's a very healthy amount of questions at the beginning, and then as we understand them, as they become more prevalent, I think we start adopting them as a society. And that's what we've seen with the orb everywhere. I think initially there's like good questions from everyone. Like you want to understand what is happening. And then as people understand two things, one, that it is actually really private, and two, that it's really useful, then it starts building trust and it grows on a market, right? And so I can think of, for example, in Lisbon, in Portugal, almost 1 in 3 adults in the city have verified, right? And so you don't get to that kind of penetration unless you start building trust, right? Same thing in Buenos Aires. I think it's also 1 in 4. Santiago de Chile is like 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 people in the city. So you start getting like really like a ton of adoption in the places where we launched the earliest. And that only comes because of that trust that is built up. Right? And to the question about buying biometrics, look, you don't think about Apple as buying your like face biometrics, right? You're using biometrics to unlock your phone, and like Apple doesn't get it. They don't win anything by it. Yeah. It's just like, that's a secure way to unlock your phone. And World ID is the same thing, right? Like we don't get your biometrics. Like there's like no benefit to us. It just
because Sam is an evil person. No, just kidding.
It's just simply that's just a secure way to prove that you're a human, right? And if you don't want to use World ID yet, that's totally fine, right? I think that for every technology, there's early adopters and late adopters. But at the end of the day, the system is open source. The orb hardware is open source. The protocol is open source. The software is open source. And so this is not just a situation where you have to trust us. Many people around the world have gone in and verified that the systems actually work the way we say they do. And we're very proud because the system is not just private. It's actually one of the most private things you've ever used by far, much more than any social media, much more than most of the applications that you use day to day.
Deploying this kind of deploying the world network and of course the biometrics identifications around the world means navigating different regulatories. And what's been the toughest challenge for you, and how does Tools for Humanity adapt locally?
What I would say here is, just as consumers have questions, right? Like regulators have questions. And again, I think like that is their job. And so usually what we do is before we'll launch in a country, we will go with whether it's the financial and the privacy and any other regulators that make sense. And we'll explain them the project so that they understand it. Once we launch, we will often stay in communication with them. And as we start growing, like questions start coming up. Yeah. What I would say has been where we've spent the most amount of time is a lot of these promises about that we are able to make in terms of privacy or the control that users have. That is not what people are used to or what regulators are used to, right? People are used to everything being stored on a server and things working a certain way. And so a lot of what we've had to do is educate not just users, but regulators about these new technologies and how they work, right? Technologies like anonymized multi-party computation or technologies like zero knowledge proof, that I think that in the future, there will be many products that will be enabled by this kind of technologies, but we are the first project at scale that is doing it, right? So imagine that you invented cryptography, right? What now every app that we use every website communicates securely through a kind of encryption, HTTPS, and every messaging app that we use also protects your messages with end-to-end encryption. Well, the first applications that used HTTPS or end-to-end encryption or many of these things, had to go and explain them, right? And so we have the fortunate or unfortunate task of having to catch everyone up on the technologies. We understand that's part of the process, and it's fine. World is a long-term project, so we're very patient, and we take as long as it takes. But that's probably been the thing that has taken the most amount of time and energy from our side, is just teaching everyone about these new things that we didn't even understand when we started, right? Because they are complex mathematical and engineering concepts.
Okay. We all know that the United States recently passed the Genius Act and a series of related bills. From your perspective, how much do you think this helps the world network? Does it relate?
Yeah, so I think generally regulatory clarity for crypto around the world, but especially in the US, is something that the space really needed, right? Because blockchains are really good. Right. And there's been projects like us that we want to play by the rules, but for that we need to know what the rules are. Right? And so for a long time, it was like this nebulous area where there was no clear rules, and it was like, well, you can do stuff, but if you screw up, we're only going to tell you after you screw up. Right? And so it's really difficult to build serious businesses at the scale that we or other players have wanted to do without clarity. Right? And so we're actually very excited about having like rules and okay, now we know there's certain things that we have to do one way. There's certain things that we have to do another way. What you're already seeing is that not just in the US, but globally, what this clarity is driving is you're seeing large institutional players, right? Like banks that have been around for more than 100 years, start to build in the space because they know they're not going to get in trouble. And so we're very excited about in general, any country bringing clarity. I think specifically what you're seeing first is a lot of regulations around stable coins, because I think that is one of the killer use cases of crypto. I think for the US, it's very smart to have stablecoin adoption because the US wants dollar adoption around the world, right? And stablecoins are distribution for the dollar. We are very excited about stablecoins, not just in the US, but globally, because we think that at the end of the day, what consumers want to do is they just want to do day-to-day transactions, right? They want to like save their money and they want to pay their friends or pay for food. And like you wouldn't do that with Bitcoin, right? Or with like a random token. You want, if you're in Mexico, you want to use Mexican pesos for all those transactions. And so stablecoin, for the first time, make it possible for blockchains and crypto systems to actually be much more relevant for people's day-to-day lives and the problems that they actually face.
And it does help the Worldcoin also.
Yes, we have Worldchain, our network, is already one of the, I'm not going to remember the exact number, but for USDC, which is the primary stablecoin in the US, we have a partnership with Circle, the issuer for USDC and Eurocoin. And we're already one of the largest networks in the world with the most USDC holders. And so stablecoin adoption is huge for world. And so any kind of clarity on that is, we welcome it with open arms.
Okay.
Okay. So what's next? What's your next plan? What is next for the World Network, and what should we look forward to?
Yeah, so we've been working on a lot of new things. We shared some of them. We had an event in San Francisco at the end of April, on April 30th, where we showed the new generation of all of our products. So we showed, we launched a new orb, which is a completely redesigned from the outside, but also re-engineered version of the device. And what that will allow us to do is to deploy a lot more of them. Right? A big focus of us right now is scaling the network, right? Making it available to as many people as possible. That is our current bottleneck. And so this new orb has a very cool feature where it can connect to your phone and guide you through the verification process. And that is important because we are now going to be able to put orbs in places like 7-Elevens or coffee shops without any employee, and it'll be like an ATM, right? You'll simply walk up to it with your phone, you'll connect your phone with the orb, and it'll guide you through the process. And so when you think about, instead of us having to rent a space in a mall and train a lot of employees and put them there and all that, now it's just as easy as deploying a lot of orbs like ATMs. And so that'll really help us grow the network. We also gave a sneak peek of the next generation device, which is called the Orb Mini, which is an orb that looks roughly like a mobile device, like a mobile phone. So it fits on your pocket. And so that device is going to ship next year. And so that's going to take things even to the next level, because instead of having to carry around an orb with a backpack, operators will now be able to have it in their pocket. So you can imagine that you buy one and you bring it to a party with your friends. And your friends that haven't verified yet, if they want to join, they can join, right? Without having to go and look for an orb at a mall or something like that. And so we showed the new hardware. We also announced a lot of new partnerships. And so one of the cool things as we've grown the network is that it's become more useful, right? So we announced a partnership with Razer, where they're now going to start using World ID to verify that you're a real human on video games, to promote fair play. And so there's going to be tournaments that are for humans only.
If you use the bot, we can ban you forever.
So you can get a 30-day timeout, and now you can make sure that that person will not just go around and create another account, right? We also announced a partnership with Match Group, which is the owner of apps like Tinder, Hinge, a bunch of them. It's obviously the biggest online dating player in the world. And so they announced that they're going to start using World ID to verify humans, first on Tinder and then hopefully in some of their other apps. And so that Tinder integration will launch in the coming months. And we also announced a partnership with Visa, where we're going to build financial products for all world users that are uniquely enabled by the fact that you're a verified human. So the first one is a new kind of card. It's called the World Card, that is also launching later this year. And so there's a ton of new integrations that were coming, not just technology, but actually a lot of new use cases globally, and then also around the world, a bunch of local ones.
Wow. So how can people that are interested in your projects get involved or learn more information about this project?
So there's all sorts of ways to get involved. The first and easiest one is just joining the network, right? And the way you do that is super simple. You go on the App Store, Google Play, you search World App or Worldcoin or World. It'll be the first result it has. And so you can get the app, you can explore the app, you can find an orb near you if you're in one of the countries where we have orbs. We're trying really hard to get them to even more countries. And you can get verified. And once you get verified, you can start using mini apps, you can start using some of these integrations, and you can also claim your share of Worldcoin tokens that you get for simply being a human. Now, beyond that, if you're like, you know what, I really like this and I want to get even more involved, there is many ways of getting involved. If you're a developer, you can build mini apps, new mini apps to ship inside of World App. Or if you already have applications that people use, you can add World ID support to your website or to your app to help prevent bots. You can also get involved as an operator, right? So if you're like, you know what, I want to help get people get verified and go around and telling people about WorldCoin, if you go to world.org, there is a form to be able to become an operator. And then generally, like I said, all of this is open source, right? So if you're a little bit more cypherpunk and you don't want to say who you are, but you want to contribute to this, you can just go to the GitHub. I believe it's something like github.com/WorldCoin. And you can see the repositories for everything, for the app, for the orb hardware, for the orb firmware, for the protocol. And you can actually just make improvements or suggest improvements right there on GitHub, like you would on any open source project. So there's a ton of ways of getting involved. The best ways to keep up with the project is the social media sites, right? So it's at WorldCoin on Twitter, it's at World on Instagram. There's a global and a few local Facebook pages, and obviously the Discord as well. So there's everywhere you are, you can probably find a World account and you can use that to keep up with the project.
Great. I think this is the last question. This is a fun question. Since you are working in the space, I'm curious, what is your personal AI secret? And how do you use AI in your day-to-day work? Or any tips you would like to share with us, our audience?
Yes, that's a great question. So obviously probably like many people here, my most commonly used AI app is ChatGPT. But my personal favorite thing to do with it is actually deep research. I found that deep research, even for, I think like the name implies that it's only for, oh, look, I want to write a paper about some idea. But for example, I came here to Taiwan and I told it, hey, I'm visiting Taiwan for the first time. Tell me everything I need to know about the place, right? Like the history, the people, the food, the culture, the sights to see. And it takes a little while, right? It takes like 10 minutes to generate a report. But what comes out of it is like this multiple page, like really high quality report. It's sort of like if you had a McKinsey consultant in your life that you could just be like, you know what, prepare me a report on this or on that. And so I love the normal ChatGPT for day-to-day stuff and figuring things out. But I would say deep research has been like very useful in my life, even for day-to-day things, not just for very theoretical ones.
Great. Tiago, thank you so much for talking with us today. It has been really inspiring. Your vision for fair digital world is really short. Thank you for sharing your idea. We are excited to see how the world network grows. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
拜拜。
如果大家有兴趣就去这个 World 的官网站或下载他们的 App 来试试看。谢谢大家，
谢谢，
拜拜，
拜拜。
喜欢本周我们分享的内容吗？
请到 Facebook、Instagram、YouTube 来留言，告诉我们你的想法，
我们都会看哦。